So if Greece is leading the resistance against this financial occupation, where is it headed? Where does that put people facing poverty and joblessness all over the Western world, where we've seen exploding protests? That's the question we want to answer. That's why we have Gerald Celente here, because he's the trends forecaster. He's founder and director of the Trends Research Institute, publisher of the Trends Journal, and always a pleasure to speak to. Thanks so much for being on the show, Gerald.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lauren.
So I just set up a number of ways in which we view wealth extraction going on in a way that we believe here on this show is becoming institutionalized and systematic. It's not a one-off situational thing. What do you think about that debate?
It's as old as the scriptures, you know, the love of money being the root of all evil. And think about it. The only time that the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, becomes violent is when he picks up a whip to drive the money changers out of the temple. So the name money changers has just evolved. Money changers, from a guy growing up in the Bronx, we used to call them loan sharks. That was another division. And now they've cleaned it up a little bit, and they call them bankers. That's all this is. It's extortion from the money changers. And it's been all diluted to make it seem as though, you know whose fault it is? I'll tell you who. It's them people out there that don't want to work. You know, the ones that they're getting all those social benefits. Couldn't have anything to do with all of those exotic financial instruments, could it? Oh, not derivatives, none of those credit default swaps, none of this phony leverage buyouts, none of this cheap money that they've been pumping into the system since 9/11.
Okay.
It was all set up. We said it was going to happen. But now, rather than them taking the blame, the money changers, they're blaming the people.
Well, and you mentioned the cheap money, so let's stay on that for a second, because I just saw a report that a U.S. lawmaker, a member of Congress from Texas, is planning to put out a bill to change the Fed's mandate from the dual mandate of price stability and low unemployment to just a single mandate of, you know, keeping inflation under wraps and preserving the value of the dollar, whatever that means. But when you look at what the Fed's done, the Fed has really only been good at one thing, in our view, and the view of a lot of people we talk to, which is keeping the big banks propped up and preserving an elite class of kleptocrats, or whatever you want to call them. So what is the Fed's mandate really? Does it matter if you change the official one?
No, it doesn't matter at all. Look at what, since the Fed has been, was created in what, 1913? What is the value of the dollar? Lost 95% of its value. And I believe in the 100 years before that, it only lost about, what, 5, 8, or 10%? So the only mandate of the Federal Reserve is to keep the bankers in power and the people underneath them. That's all it is. And again, let's look at the facts. Go back 10 years ago. You want to see the brilliant job of the Fed and this whole money-pumping scheme. As we speak today, what's the price of oil? Brent crude, what, around $124 a barrel?
Yeah.
What was it 10 years ago? Gee, about $20 a barrel. What happened to commodity prices such as corn, wheat, soybeans in the last year? What did they go up about, 50%? Oh, and how about the price of gold, Lauren? Go back to 10 years ago, about $280 an ounce. Today, about $1,780 an ounce. They're devaluing the dollar and enslaving the people, particularly with these low interest rates, because you can't put your money with the money changers. You're not getting any interest. So they're forcing you also to speculate in their casinos, which are basically rigged games.
Well, let's stay on this, because I thought it was interesting, too. There was a report that came out from Bloomberg that Turkey is being penalized in the credit markets because they are failing to incentivize consumer savings, according to this report. Turkey is the second fastest growing economy after China. So this is a real example of why savings matters, or how savings is seen as mattering for a country. So what is this argument in the U.S. that savings doesn't matter, that seems to be gaining traction with a contingency in the mainstream, and there's just this belief that, you know, everything will work out if you just have central banks tweak things a little bit here and there, and we'll all be fine?
Yeah, well, it's hypocrisy is what it is. Again, You know, let's also, this whole fallacy, I just heard Mario Draghi, the head of the European Central Bank, you know, another former Goldman Sachs guy. What was he, the head of Goldman Sachs in Europe, the European division, and also, you know, the Goldman Sachs gang that helped Greeks cook their books so they could get into the European Monetary Union. Yeah, that Mario Draghi. And he's blaming the whole issue on socialism and the social safety nets and the entitlements. They're pushing it all back on the people. And this fallacy is that if the people just take less, earn less, and pay more taxes, that somehow that's going to create jobs. And the big lie is that the system collapsed not because of the workers, but because of the banks, the hedge funds, the private equity groups, and all the dirty dealing.
And I think you bring up an interesting distinction, too, because there's a distinction between wealth extraction and wealth creation. Even during the robber baron period, where you had inequality, you still had robber barons that were creating something, whereas now you just have a class of people that are extracting wealth. But I want to hit on something where you're talking about how people cannot save, and what that world is. Because a world without savings, isn't that feudalism? If you have people that cannot have their own capital and increase their wealth, and they're getting credit from a class of elites, is that feudalism here? Are we headed towards that? How do you see it?
Well, it is already. You know, it's usury. And what they're doing, look at Christmas sales in the States. Why did they go up? Hey, it couldn't be because people increased their credit card debt in November and December by about $20 billion each month. The savings is being depleted. They keep having them consumed. And you started talking in the earlier part about all these uprisings that are going on and what all this is going to mean. Here's what it's going to mean.
Wow. You think this is headed towards a great war?
It is, and we wrote this last year. It was our spring edition. The first great war of the 21st century has begun. It's not a pro-democracy movement over in Tunisia or Egypt or in Bahrain or in Yemen. It's not hooligans that were taking to the street in Britain. It's not anarchists in Greece. When the money stops flowing down to the man on the street, the blood starts flowing in the streets. Yes, it's neo-feudalism, but there's one difference this time, Lauren, is that the serfs and the peasants are educated, and they know what's going on. I'll tell you, a big business in the years to come, a great entrepreneurial opportunity is going to be guillotines, because people have had it. They're not stupid.
Yeah.
And they see what's going on, and the game is rigged.
Well, then, you know, Gerald, we have to go to break quickly, but when we get back, I want to talk about what it will take for people like you and me who maybe aren't destitute and out on the streets, but who are aware that we're being wronged. What it's going to take for a class of people like us to be out there on the streets and to see some action there. So we will have more after the break with Gerald Celente. He is trends forecaster with Trends Research Institute. And still ahead, don't go away. It's Friday, which means I'm going to respond to your feedback, and you're not going to want to miss what I have to say about everything you're saying. But first, your closing market numbers.